Hello, YouTube. My name is Lana, and this is From Corporate to Crystals. Today, I'm excited to talk about a video that I think is just really important as a lot of people are going through awakenings right now. It can be confusing, and everybody's experience will be totally different. So, I wanted to share on a very human level what mine felt like and looked like at the very beginning, probably like the first 6 months. That way, if people are going through one or think they're going through one, at least you can get an opinion of what it looked like to someone who had no idea what was going on. So yeah, today we're going to talk about how did I know that I was going through a spiritual awakening. So again, the first thing I want to say is I feel like you just know. And I hate when people said that. That was like one of my biggest pet peeves is people would always just say when talking about spirituality that you would just know. And at the very beginning when, you're not as intuitive, you're not as connected to yourself, or at least I wasn't, that never really made sense to me. But I will tell you, you do just know. And there's a bunch of other things that are not so vague that can help you as well. But I just knew. I remember I was talking to a friend and I said out loud to her, I think I'm going through a spiritual awakening. And it was the first time I had said it out loud. And I almost seemed kind of like shocked by what I said. But after I said it, I was like, no, that feels right. That's exactly what this is. And so I started Googling, and sure enough, that's exactly what it was. So the first thing is you will just know. I'm reading my notes, by the way. The second thing, I was super anxious and just sensitive. I cry a lot anyway, but this was like next level crying. And I didn't have like good reasons for it. I just felt very sensitive, very easily overwhelmed. And then the anxiety was probably because of that overwhelm. Things in my life were just feeling kind of overwhelming and chaotic. The next thing keep in mind my awakening, it started in March of 2020, maybe February of 2020. There's not like this, for most people, it's a little bit more gradual, so it's hard to put a date on it. Some people have instant awakenings. For me, mine was more gradual. So I would say it was the first week of March that I said it out loud. So it probably started in February. But yeah, I could just feel something was going on. I felt trapped in my house. So we're going through a pandemic and, I was supposed to be in my house, obviously quarantining, and I totally was, but I felt trapped at my house, which I love. I'm a homebody. I love being home. So it was something different for me. I was like, what is the problem? Is it because now someone's telling you have to stay home? And I'm a little rebellious, so I thought at first maybe that's what it was, but no, I was just being drawn to nature. I needed to be in wide open spaces. I felt really connected to nature. I felt comfortable and safe when I was in nature. So that's exactly what I did is, anytime I was feeling overwhelmed or anxious in my house, I would go out to nature. So yeah, I was very drawn to that. Sorry, my dog is chewing on something underneath it. Okay, so angel numbers. This is for every awakening path. You'll experience angel numbers. But as a twin flame, it is even more so, based on what I've heard from clients and friends who have also been awakened. If you're going through a spiritual awakening, though, you're going to have a lot of angel numbers pop up. So most commonly heard is 1111 or 111, 11. Again, as a twin, we have a lot of them. It is truly like nonstop on the twin flame journey. It's like crazy. But if you're going through that, it's basically, it catches your attention. You'll be sitting there doing your work. All of a sudden you look up at the clock and it's, 333, 444, 555. And you'll be driving and someone's license plate right in front of you is the same number, like 333, just like you saw on the clock right before that. you go, you get gas. The receipt has the numbers on it as well, 333. So it starts getting to the point where you can't deny it. It's trying to get your attention. And it definitely does. So angel numbers. Let's see. I could not sleep. This is a super common one, but I'm a great sleeper. Like, I don't have issues sleeping. So this one, not only did it like kind of piss me off, if I'm honest, it also was really hard because I'm a great sleeper, but I also need sleep. Like, without sleep, I get very grumpy. I'm not like the most productive person. I've been like this my whole life. So the inability to sleep not only impacted my like day-to-day life, but it caught my attention because it was so out of my normal behavior patterns. And then of course, I'm sure some of you have heard this, where it really was for me, it was 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. I mean, there was a time where I was only sleeping like 2 days a week, fully through the night. Maybe like if that was a good week. 7 days in a week, 2 of them to sleep fully through. That's not good for someone like me. So yeah, I wasn't sleeping well at all. It always was between 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Typically, once I was awake, I couldn't go back to sleep for hours. And then there were multiple times where I would wake up, check my phone, and right as I woke up, it was 3:33. So 3:33 a.m., right? Or 4:44 a.m. It got creepy for a little bit there. But for the most part, as I got further into my journey, unfortunately, the time frame that I stayed awake was longer. But at the beginning, it was weird. It would just, I'd wake up, I'd check my phone to see what time it was, and sure enough, it was a synchronistic time. So that was kind of creepy but cool at the same time, and it just kept going. Let's see. This one is hard to describe, so I hope I do a good job of describing it, but I'm a feeler, so I'm going to describe how it felt. There was one day where I woke up and I could just feel and see that all of a sudden my emotions and thoughts, I was distant from them. Okay, and that's when your consciousness shifts. So when your consciousness rises or raises, it feels as though there's now some distance, some space between your thoughts and emotions. So how does this look on like a day-to-day basis? Let's say normally, a coworker. It's a coworker that you're not super fond of, or whatever the situation is, and you immediately upon interacting with them, even if it's just internal, you might have an emotional response like, ugh, this coworker or something. Well, rather than experiencing that and just having an automatic emotional reaction, this consciousness shift allows you to feel your reaction, that same kind of like, not fond feeling popping up about them. But it also then, the distance allows you to not take that and act off of it. So where perhaps you would, go in Slack or text message your coworker about it, all of a sudden you're like, why is it the space? You notice your emotion and then you think to yourself, why is it that I have a problem with this coworker? And that space, that distance allows you to kind of recognize your own behavior patterns or your own emotional responses. And from that, it makes you start kind of doing some introspection. I thought that was the most telling for me in my journey, is that distance that I then felt from my emotions and my emotional responses. Increase in empathy and compassion. This one was big. I talked in my last video about like how I just felt really blissful, and I used blissed out was my term. And that's super true. I just felt great at the beginning of my awakening, but I also had a lot of compassion and empathy for everyone around me. And that lasted for a good, it's lasted the entire journey, but there's different stages to your awakening. So at the beginning, you just start recognizing that we're all humans. We're all in this thing together, and it's friggin' hard. It doesn't matter who you are, just like life can be really hard. And you have a lot of empathy and compassion for people because you start recognizing that and how we're all connected. You start, or at least for me, I felt detached and disconnected from basically my entire life. And there's times where that felt good and like okay. And then there's times where that felt lonely and kind of scary. And you're going to kind of go through cycles of that if you're going through an awakening, and it's totally normal and totally okay. But it is basically allowing you to have that same space to recognize what parts of your life, you want to improve, or what parts of your life you want to change, or what parts of your life are perhaps not authentic or aligned to who you really are or who you want to be. A good example of that is maybe there's a friendship and you start recognizing that this friendship, it's really just one-sided. It doesn't feel like it fulfills you the way that it used to back in the day. And you'll go through a lot of introspection and kind of recognition like that on your awakening journey. Another thing worth noting is at the beginning of my awakening, in most people's, you have this surge of, bliss, beauty, increased sensitivity, increased empathy, everything. But then as it continues onward, what happens is your shadow elements, once you start recognizing some behavior patterns in yourself that you want to change, for example, that coworker story, when you recognize there's nothing wrong with the coworker and you're just being kind of a jerk, then you start seeing that show up and you're like, well, I want to change that. I want to be better than that. That person did nothing to me. And you start wanting to fix your own emotional responses or the way you act and react to certain situations. That would basically be an example of how a shadow element of mine would pop up and I'd want to work through it. Okay. And that will happen a lot as you start migrating in towards healing. And your healing journey will have a lot of shadow work. And that's just one very small example of a shadow element that you would want to work through. As those shadow elements become more and more visible to you, your journey shifts from bliss into kind of a lot of confusion and then some, if we're honest, some darkness. Because you start seeing parts of yourself that you wish weren't there. And you start seeing parts of yourself where you see the way you behave and you want to do better. And sometimes that can be really hard to own and acknowledge, but it's super normal, and all of us have these shadow elements, so you're not alone and don't beat yourself up over it. The fact that you want to do better is the best part. And then that's about the time you've heard the term potentially of dark night of the soul. That will show up and you'll have some really big shadow elements that you'll have to heal through. And those are kind of indicators that you're going towards, or you potentially are in a dark night of the soul. And during those times, that's where you can work with a coach and they can really help you to kind of get a perspective on your shadow elements, how to heal through them, and help yourself work through that, because it can be pretty uncomfortable. And then, during parts of I would say first 6 months of my awakening, I definitely had some clairsenses kicked on. So clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. I experienced on mine in the first 6 months some visuals that would pop up and it just catches your attention. There's just no way. One example that I had that was pretty cool, I was talking to a friend and we were talking about dogs. She was meeting my dog actually, and she was like, oh, my family has a dog back at home, but I personally don't have a dog. And I asked her, I said, what breed does your family have back home? And before she could even respond, I saw in my mind's eye a boxer. And I'm very familiar with dog breeds, so I knew it was a boxer. And then she goes, oh, they have 2 boxers. My family has 2 boxers. and it freaked me out at first. So I've had multiple clairvoyant experiences like that, which again are kind of like designed to catch your attention. So it can be a little startling, but it's also really cool. And as it's happening, you kind of know what's going on as it happens. My two strongest clairsenses are claircognizance and clairsentience. So my clairsentience was actually one of the most telling of my journey of the fact that I was going through an awakening, because anytime I was around other people, I could feel their emotions inside my body, which I'll get into in other videos. That can be really kind of startling, but at the same time, it is something that will happen or could happen, whether it be your friend, whether it be a movie where you're watching a movie and something in the movie makes you have an emotional reaction within your body, because you're reacting to a situation the character's in. There's different things like that that really got far larger than what they normally would, and so it caught my attention as well. So I would say that's a good starting list of some of the indicators that I knew I was going to be going through, or I was going through an awakening. So yeah, I hope this video helps you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share, subscribe, you know the drill, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks. Bye.